Welcome to Verge File.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started with 4 words I never expected to hear from the woman I married. I need new energy. Amanda didn't flinch when she said it. She didn't even blink. We were sitting on our patio, her wine glass catching the late sunlight like nothing in our world was broken. But something was, and I just didn't know how deep the crack ran yet. She kept going, like she'd rehearsed it. I've been reading this book, she said, about couples evolving past traditional boundaries. Emotional expansion. Shared freedom. Shared freedom. That's how she dressed it up. What she really meant was this. She wanted permission to explore other men and still keep me as her safety net. I stayed silent. Not because I didn't understand, but because I understood too well. See, when a woman says something like that, she's not asking for your opinion. She's informing you of a decision she's already made in her head. Amanda didn't want a discussion. She wanted a reaction she could frame as toxic if I didn't agree. So I gave her nothing. Just one nod. That scared her more than if I'd exploded. She expected a fight. Instead, she got strategy. And in that moment, I stopped being the husband she thought she could manipulate and became the man she'd no longer recognize by the time she regretted everything. But let's rewind. This didn't come out of nowhere. A month before that patio conversation, she'd been acting different. Suddenly interested in gym classes she never liked before. New dresses, fresh perfume, laughs that sounded rehearsed, and a phone she treated like a vault. At first, I thought it was just a phase. Then I caught her smiling at messages from a guy named Dean. The name didn't ring any bells. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask. I just watched. Watched as she became a version of herself that looked nothing like the woman I married, and everything like someone trying to be noticed by someone new. When she finally brought up the hall pass, I realized something. She wasn't asking me to be okay with it. She was testing whether I was weak enough to accept it. Because here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Sometimes when someone says they want to explore, they've already done it in their head 100 times. They're just looking for a way to make the fallout your fault. Amanda thought if she framed it as growth, I'd either support her or leave looking like the insecure one. But I didn't support it. And I didn't leave. I let her keep talking. She said, it wouldn't be physical right away. It's about energy, attraction, connection. I said nothing. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I was already calculating everything. If she wanted comparisons, she'd get them. Not with words. With silence. With detachment. With distance so cold it would make her miss the warmth she used to take for granted. She finished her wine. Looked at me like she'd just confessed something noble. That's when I said it. Sure. If you're seeing other men, I'll start comparing you to other women. Her face dropped. She didn't see that coming. But I wasn't bluffing. That night, I slept like a man who'd just found the off switch to a fire he didn't start. And I knew one thing. She wouldn't survive the silence that was coming. After that night, Amanda started watching me more closely. She'd float into the room with a curious smile, pretending nothing had shifted, but her eyes scanned for changes. She wanted to know if I was bluffing. I wasn't. But I didn't storm out. Didn't vanish. I stayed calm, strategic, precise. Every move I made from that moment on was designed for silence, not shock. She thought she'd started a game. She didn't realize I'd changed the board. Over the next week, I adjusted everything, subtly at first. I stopped being her emotional sponge. No more late-night talks about how unfulfilled she felt. No more listening to her pretend that it wasn't about me. No more being her emotional safety net while she chased strangers for excitement. I became neutral, polite, distant. She'd talk about her day. I'd nod. She'd mention Dean again, once in a story, casually, like a friend. I just kept scrolling on my phone. She was baiting me, trying to see if I'd react. But there was nothing left to defend. When you accept that someone already burned the bridge, there's no use guarding it. I started waking up earlier, hitting the gym again. Not the lazy jogs I used to do, but real, punishing sessions. Heavy lifts, cold showers, clean diet, no distractions. She noticed. One morning, she came out in a robe, saw me lacing my shoes. You've been up early every day this week. I didn't even look at her. Yeah, that was it. And that silence hit harder than any fight. You could see it in her face. She was waiting for me to chase her again. To beg. To plead. To give her the emotional high of being desired by the man she was slowly discarding. Instead, I gave her something she didn't know how to process. Indifference. I started dressing better. Sharper. Not for her. For me. My phone started buzzing more, texts from old friends, a few women I hadn't talked to in a while. I didn't hide anything. Left the screen facing up. I had nothing to conceal. Because I wasn't playing her game. I was rewriting mine. By day 5, Amanda stopped mentioning open energy. She tried shifting back, making small gestures, cooking dinner, sitting closer on the couch, complimenting me out of nowhere. But by then, the emotional current had flipped. She was chasing me, and I wasn't running. I wasn't even moving. Because I already knew what she feared most wasn't me leaving. It was me staying, but no longer being hers. And that's exactly what I became, present, but gone. She wanted freedom, so I gave it to her. In the most brutal form possible, by removing myself from her reach without ever leaving the room. And the moment she realized she couldn't get me back by just snapping her fingers, that was when the panic started to bloom. She had no idea how silence could scream. But by day 7, it was all she could hear. I wasn't cold. I wasn't cruel. I was just gone. Still there physically. Same apartment. Same routine. But emotionally, she could feel the gap between us like a locked door with no handle. She started overcompensating. Suddenly, she was full of questions again. Where are you going? Who were you texting? You've been different lately. But I gave her the same energy she once gave me. Half answers, polite deflection, quiet confidence. Not revenge. Not pettiness. Just balance. She asked if I wanted to go out for dinner Friday night. I told her I had plans. Didn't elaborate. Didn't lie. Just watched the realization settle behind her eyes like a shadow she couldn't unsee. By the time I came back that night, after catching up with an old friend over drinks, she was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, not texting, just staring at the screen. She didn't ask how the night went. She didn't have to. She already knew she'd lost control. Amanda had confused my love with weakness. She thought I wouldn't walk away, that I needed her validation, that I'd never be able to detach. But what she didn't understand is that when a man truly stops caring, it doesn't come with yelling or tears. It comes with silence. Clean. Final. Sharp as a scalpel. I started sleeping better. Laughing more. Eating like I used to before we moved in together. Even my playlist changed. No more background noise of someone else's preferences. Just my own rhythm returning. She noticed, and it broke her. She'd come into the kitchen and linger like she had something to say. Hover by the doorway, waiting for me to ask what was on her mind. I didn't. She began leaving subtle trails. Old photos on the table, notes from better days, even playing songs we used to love. But I didn't bite, because by then, I was already past the mourning stage. I wasn't grieving the loss of a relationship. I was celebrating the return of myself. One morning, I caught her scrolling through her phone, looking at our old pictures. Her fingers hovered over one for too long. Then she locked the screen and walked away. I didn't follow, didn't ask, because I'd already seen what I needed to see. Regret. But it was too late. She wanted freedom. Now she had it. And the most brutal part? She realized freedom without loyalty doesn't feel like flying. It feels like falling. There's a moment when someone's senses power shift, but they can't admit it yet. That's where Amanda was now. Still pretending nothing changed. Still walking around the apartment like she had the upper hand. But her body language was different. Shorter glances. Less confidence. Smiles that died halfway to her eyes. She'd started cooking again. Small gestures. I made your favorite. I said thank you. Every time, without emotion. She wasn't feeding me out of love. She was testing for reaction. I gave her none. Meanwhile, I kept moving in silence. I'd already transferred my savings. Redirected mail. Talked to a realtor. Even spoke with a lawyer, quietly, off record, just to understand what I'd need when the time came. Amanda was too distracted by the cracks in her little fantasy to see the exit signs lighting up behind her. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. She asked if we could talk. Not argue. Not confess. Just talk. I said sure. She sat across from me with that nervous calm you only see when someone's trying to sell themselves one last time. She spoke about us, how maybe we lost connection, how maybe things went too far. I nodded, listening. She said, I just thought. Maybe I needed to experience more before I could fully appreciate what we had. That's when I realized she wasn't apologizing. She was justifying. I asked her one question. If I told you I'd been seeing someone too, would you still want this to work? She froze. Not because of what I said, but because for the first time, she saw it was possible, that I had moved on emotionally, that her choices had consequences she hadn't calculated. She laughed nervously and said, "Would you compare me to her?" I looked at her calm and said, "Only if you want me to." She didn't respond because she knew she'd wanted options, adventures, to feel wanted again by strangers who didn't know her flaws. But what she forgot was, every woman out there is someone's wife, someone's mistake, someone's lesson. And I'd been busy learning. She got up and went into the bedroom, closed the door, didn't slam it, didn't cry. She was unraveling in silence now, the same way I had, months ago. But there's a difference. When men like me unravel, we come back rebuilt. When women like her unravel, they look around and realize no one's chasing. Not anymore. And definitely not me. I didn't storm out, didn't yell, didn't grab a suitcase and slam the door. That would have made her the victim. Amanda would have told everyone I overreacted, that I couldn't handle honesty. No, I wasn't handing her that narrative. I left the way I'd been planning, slowly, surgically, and without announcement. I started with the small, precise removals. My jackets disappeared from the hallway rack one by one. She didn't notice. My laptop, my gym bag, gone from their usual place. No questions, not even a glance. She was too busy pretending we were healing. But I was just making space for absence. Then, one night, I changed the locks on the storage unit. The one we shared, but only I paid for. It held the things that mattered, documents, backups, heirlooms. She never went there, never cared. But now she couldn't. I set up mail forwarding, cleaned my digital trail, even closed the streaming account and opened a private one. She messaged me about it. Did the subscription lapse? I replied, no, I canceled it. That was all. Not cruel, just clear. The cracks widened when she noticed I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I wasn't on the couch either. I'd rented a small studio nearby. Nothing fancy, just mine. That silence hit her harder than any argument could have. She started texting more, asking if I wanted dinner, suggesting we reconnect. But I was already gone. I just hadn't closed the door yet. Then came the trigger moment. I returned one night to grab something I'd left. She was on the phone, didn't hear me walk in. Her voice dropped low, intimate. I didn't hear every word, but I didn't need to. The tone said enough. She hung up fast when she saw me, smiled, said, "Hey." I looked at her the same way I would look at a stranger on the street. Not cold, not angry, just indifferent. She asked, "Where have you been staying?" I told her, "A place where no one pretends." That was it. Her posture shifted, like she wanted to chase the moment, explain, defend. But she didn't, because for the first time, she felt it. Not loss, irrelevance. And once a man stops reacting, a woman like her realizes how loud silence can be. She texted that night, said she missed me, that she wanted to start over. But starting over only works when both people were honest to begin with. And she'd been performing a version of herself for so long, she forgot who she actually was. Amanda mistook my silence for a waiting room. She thought I was taking a break, cooling down, preparing to return to the story we once shared. But the truth was, I had already walked out of the theater. The show was over. The curtain had fallen. I just let her sit there, watching the empty stage. Her messages started to shift, from curious to concerned. First, just checking in. Then, can we talk? Finally, I miss you. But missing someone isn't the same as valuing them. It's the echo people chase after they've burned the bridge and realize the sound doesn't bounce back. I didn't reply. Instead, I moved everything else out. Left the coffee mugs we bought together. The cheap art she picked for the hallway. The little souvenirs from trips she barely remembered. I wasn't interested in memories that only made sense to one of us. I removed my name from the lease 2 days before the next rent cycle. Quietly, legally. She never saw it coming. When she got the notice from the landlord, she called. I let it ring. Then came the email. Subject, why? No body text. Just that single word. I read it. Deleted it. Didn't respond. Because when someone needs you to explain why you left, it means they never listened when you were still there. I wasn't trying to hurt her. That would have required effort, emotion, energy. And I had none left for her. That was the point. When we finally crossed paths again, it wasn't planned. I was at a coffee shop, working. She walked in, froze when she saw me. She smiled like she expected me to do the same. I didn't. She sat down, uninvited. Said she'd been thinking a lot. I let her talk. She mentioned therapy, growth, Change. Said she wanted to rebuild. I nodded politely. Then I stood up. And before walking away, I said the only sentence I had left for her. You're not the villain in my story. You're just not in it anymore. She looked stunned, like she thought she still had pages left to write. But I'd already closed the book. That moment didn't feel like revenge. It felt like relief. And that's what people like Amanda never understand. When a man finally chooses silence, it's not because he's lost. It's because he's done mapping a world that never existed. I walked out, left my coffee on the table, untouched. And just like that, she became part of the background. A week after that coffee shop moment, I heard from one of Amanda's friends, Cassie. She messaged me out of the blue. She's not doing well. You should at least talk to her. I read it, let the message sit there, then archived the chat without replying. I wasn't punishing Amanda. I just no longer accepted emotional debt that didn't belong to me. It's strange how people try to rewrite a story when they realize they're not in the next chapter. They start painting themselves as the victim, the misunderstood, the one who just made a mistake. But they never talk about the choices that led there, the hours, the lies, the patterns. Amanda wasn't hurting because I left. She was hurting because I didn't leave a door open behind me. And that's the thing. Most people don't regret the betrayal. They regret losing access. I watched from a distance as she started to unravel. Her posts changed. No more polished smiles or curated happiness. Just vague quotes, late-night selfies, nostalgic captions about growth and learning. It wasn't growth. It was the echo of someone realizing they'd been left behind. Meanwhile, I wasn't reinventing myself. I was remembering who I was before I made room for someone who only ever took. I picked up my guitar again, after years of it gathering dust. Started running early mornings. No music, just the sound of my own breath cutting through the cold air. Booked a solo trip to Colorado. No agenda, just space. And that's what Amanda never understood. I didn't leave because she cheated. I left because I realized I didn't recognize the man who tolerated it. She could keep the excuses. I was reclaiming my silence. One afternoon, Cassie called again, this time with urgency. Said Amanda had gone dark. That maybe I should just check in. But if Amanda wanted help, she had people. Therapists. Friends. Family. I was none of those things anymore. I was the man who had finally chosen peace over performance. Still, I did check, in my own way. I drove by the old apartment. Lights off. Curtains drawn. Nothing dramatic. Just a stillness that felt familiar. I realized then, Amanda was facing something I had already survived. My own silence. And silence, when you've built your worth on noise, is unbearable. I left no trace that I'd been there. No knock. No message. No note. Because the most powerful closure you can offer someone is your absence. And the greatest apology you can give yourself is leaving and never turning back. I didn't block Amanda. I didn't need to. Blocking her would have been theatrical, performative, a show of anger. And I wasn't angry. I was done. She texted once. Just one line. Can we talk? I didn't delete it. Didn't respond either. Just let it sit there, like a voicemail from a version of my life that no longer applied. It wasn't cruel. It was clarity. When people say closure, they usually mean they want one last opportunity to change your mind. But I didn't need closure from her. I'd already found it in the silence she created when she thought I wasn't listening. There's this moment you reach, and it doesn't come with fireworks or screaming or dramatic exits. It comes in the middle of a regular day, when you realize the peace of not explaining yourself feels better than any apology you never got. I didn't leave Amanda behind. I left the version of me that waited. Waited for her to change. Waited for honesty. Waited for the version of her that existed in my imagination. Not the one who smiled at texts from men she pretended not to know. That man, me, he was always trying to fix, to forgive, to understand. That man doesn't live here anymore. I started doing everything differently. Changed the locks. Sold the furniture. Not out of spite, but to remove the imprint she left on every corner of my world. Bought a new mattress. Tossed the old sheets. Repainted the walls. Erased the shadows she left behind. Every step wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. About reclaiming a home that had turned into a waiting room for betrayal. I even changed my number eventually. Not because she kept reaching out, but because I didn't want any future version of her to think she still had a line to me. When people show you who they are, believe them. But when they show you who you are when you're with them, don't just believe it. Leave it. I didn't need to post about my healing. I didn't need to prove I was better off. The best revenge isn't becoming someone she misses. It's becoming someone she never gets to meet again. The man who stayed quiet when she expected chaos. The man who walked away when she thought she still had time. And maybe the hardest part for her wasn't the silence. It was realizing I didn't leave a single piece behind for her to hold on to. Not a fight. Not a message. Not a scar. Just air. It's strange how people start noticing your absence once your presence no longer needs to prove anything. Amanda showed up 2 weeks later. No warning. Just a knock at the door. She stood there like a ghost that hadn't realized it was already dead. Hair done. Makeup soft. Wearing the same hoodie she used to steal from my closet. She looked at me like she expected something. Shock. Anger. Maybe even relief. I gave her nothing. She started with the usual. I didn't think it would end like this, followed by a shaky. Can't we at least talk? I didn't let her in. Not because I was bitter. Because I was finished. You don't reopen doors you spent months locking. She tried again, said she didn't recognize the man I'd become. That part was true. She didn't recognize this version of me because she never helped build it. She only knew the version that forgave too fast and broke too quietly. I stood in that doorway, hearing her words, but feeling nothing. Not rage. Not grief. Just space. And I realized, that's the real end. When their voice no longer moves you. When their presence no longer matters. When you're not trying to hurt them, you're just not trying anything at all. She asked why I didn't fight for us. I almost laughed. Because the moment I would have fought, she was already fighting for someone else's attention. You don't get to set the house on fire and complain about the warmth disappearing. Before she left, she said one more thing. Something she thought would bring me back to her level. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did. But that wasn't the threat she thought it was. Because I don't want to be loved like that again. Conditional. Selfish. Convenient. I didn't slam the door. I closed it slowly. Deliberately. Like a period at the end of a sentence I didn't need to reread. And I didn't watch her walk away. Because what's the point of looking back at something you already buried? She wanted closure. I left her with silence. Because silence is louder when someone expects noise. And in that silence, every one of her excuses echoed back at her. She thought I'd chase. She thought I'd crack. Instead, I vanished without ever leaving town. The truth is, people don't miss you when you're gone. They miss you when they realize you're not coming back. And I never looked over my shoulder again. People always imagine the end of a relationship as loud. Yelling, slamming doors, dramatic exits. But the real ending? It's quiet. Surgical. Precise. No broken plates. No screaming matches. Just absence. After Amanda left that doorstep, I didn't replay the moment. I didn't check her socials. I didn't stalk her new life from the shadows. I deleted the path entirely. There was no more bridge to cross because I removed the road beneath it. I upgraded everything. New locks. New passwords. I even repainted the apartment. Changed the scent, the layout, the energy. Erased every echo of her presence. Not out of hate, but to reclaim the air. I changed my number. The people worth keeping got it. The rest faded into background noise. The silence became a sanctuary. And in that stillness, I rebuilt. Got back in the gym. Not to impress. To anchor. Started reading again. Real books. Not just articles and headlines. I reconnected with friends I'd ghosted during the relationship. Not one of them said, "I told you so." They didn't need to. They just showed up and stayed. I didn't become a new man. I became the man I paused to love her. And in that process, I understood something. Some people don't break you. They just reveal how far you've drifted from yourself. One night, months later, I passed by the bar where that infamous photo was taken. I didn't stop. Didn't stare. Just walked by. Because ghosts don't haunt places, they haunt moments. And that moment no longer held me. Later, I heard Amanda moved. Some city hours away. New job. New guy. Same smile. And I wished her nothing. Not luck. Not failure. Just nothing. Because the opposite of love isn't hate. It's disinterest. You don't need to curse someone to be free from them. You just need to live like they never held the pen to your story. And I was writing again. New chapters. New focus. No footnotes about betrayal. The day I finally tossed out her last hoodie, I didn't flinch. I didn't sniff it for nostalgia. I just dropped it in the bin, tied the bag, and walked out. That's when I knew. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. You don't need their apology. You just need your peace. And peace doesn't come with answers. It comes with exits. Clean ones. I didn't leave her with revenge. I left her with absence. And sometimes, silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of power. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.